Well, hey folks, it's Mike from Profiling Evil, and there's big news in the Long Island serial killer case. You're going to want to stick around and hear why I think police might have the right guy. Well, hey everybody, welcome to Profiling Evil in this special edition. I'm just returning from a week-long trip in California to a worldwide GIS or Geography and Mapping conference. One of the things I really like to do here at Profiling Evil is map out crimes and talk about them from a geographic perspective. And today, with the news of the Long Island serial killer and the arrest of Rex Heuermann from New York, we're going to be able to look at why I think police might really be on the mark. I hope you'll hit that like and subscribe button and ring the bell. And by golly, folks, this is one where you're going to want to go down the rabbit hole. My time with this case started many, many years ago when I did a special documentary called The Killing Season with A&E. And in that, I was talking about a serial killer case in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the possible tie it might have to the Long Island serial killer case. Now, frankly, I don't think there is a tie, but that got me looking into the Long Island serial killer case almost a decade ago. And I think you're going to be interested in some of the things that I've created. First and foremost, let's make sure we're all getting right up to speed. Police this morning at 6 a.m. East Coast time made an arrest near the location where the disposal site of those bodies has been recovered in the Long Island serial killer case. Some people know it as the Gilgo Beach case. But the bottom line is police have arrested a guy named Rex Heuermann. He's an architect from New York City, but he lives near the site where those bodies were discovered. And I'm going to be mapping out where he lives and where those recovery sites were on those bodies, just to give you a little insight. And more importantly, we're going to look at where he works and the location where some of those victims in the Gilgo Beach or Long Island serial killer case were last seen. So first, I want to remind you of a couple of places where you can go and get some background, because this is a rabbit hole you definitely want to go down. And by the way, folks, make sure you're hitting that like and subscribe button. Make sure you're sharing us with your friends as well. Now, first and foremost, I'd like to invite you to go back 2 years to the Long Island serial killer video I did. It's only 30 minutes long, but it gives you a pretty good indication of some of the cases, including I really focus in on the last case of Gilbert, which I'm not convinced yet is part of the Long Island serial killer case, although I know the attorney and the family would really like that to happen. And if you remember that bone-chilling 911 call when Shannon Gilbert made the call and said someone was following her, I'll tell you, it was really compelling. But frankly, I think this woman died from exposure. We'll see what your thoughts are on it as you go along and you dig into the rabbit hole. But go back and watch that video if you're interested, and I'll put the links down below. In fact, maybe what I'll do is just tie that video to the end of this one in case you want to watch it. And another place you're going to want to go is to my story map on the Long Island serial killer case. Now, there's the easiest way to find it is just go to profilingevil.com and click on the link to story maps. From there, you can just cycle through some of the story maps that are there, and there's some pretty cool ones that you might want to look into. And click on the link to the Long Island serial killer case. Once you're there, you're going to be able to explore this case from top to bottom. And I'll just point out a couple of things that I think are pretty darn cool. Number one, we talk a little bit about the history of the case, and you'll find as you scroll through this, it's actually interactive where you can go in and explore and dig a little deeper and learn a little bit more. I've put the location where the victims were discovered. We call that the disposal site. And you're going to find this is really intriguing as I go and flip on a little video here in just a moment where we talk a little more about that particular disposal site and the disposal site of all the victims in comparison to where this suspect was arrested this morning. And so we're going to go back to 2010 when Suffolk County Police launched a search for Shannan Gilbert. And I really dig into this one. There's 3D imagery, there's 3D maps that explore all the direction she travels. In fact, let's just listen real quickly to a little news report that included her 911 call that started all of this now 13 years ago.
Today, police on Long Island trying to solve a 12-year mystery, the disappearance and death of Shannan Gilbert.
There's somebody after me. Where are you? There's somebody after me.
Releasing the 911 call on the night 24-year-old Gilbert disappeared.
Where are you, ma'am? I don't know.
Authorities say Gilbert was a sex worker driven to a man's house by another man who acted as her de facto security. The men's voices are heard on the call.
No, time to go.
Please.
Police say both men were interviewed and have never been charged or named as suspects.
Listen, I'm going to simplify everything right now. It's a horrible accident. It's tragic.
Gilbert, who police say had a history of substance abuse and mental illness, at times seemed incoherent on the tape. The search for Gilbert led to the discovery of 10 other sets of remains near Gilgo Beach. Many of them were later identified as sex workers. Gilbert's remains were found in a swamp near where she vanished. Today, police said there's no connection between Gilbert and those other Gilgo Beach murders. But if there is more to her death, they hope this audio
Somebody after me.
will prompt someone to come forward. Ann Thompson, NBC News.
Well, police never located this woman, but in 2010, a police officer with his canine dog on a training exercise discovered the skeletal remains of a woman in a nearly disintegrated burlap sack out in that area. It ended up being Shannan Gilbert. And this launched what was called the Gilgo 4 and these 4 women that were originally found. It grew and grew and grew, and now we're where we are today with an arrest. So as you go through that story map, you're going to see information on what the history was of this investigation and what each step along the way was in the case. Again, I think you'll really like this story map. And then we're going to go into the actual developments that have come along in the case. And of course, today is the biggest development. But then we'll talk about the 2010 victims, the women who were discovered in 2010. And you'll be able to cycle through the map and look at where they were from, where they were found, get a little more information on each one of them, see a few news reports, and other kinds of things. And we'll talk about the 2011 victims and each of those that were found and the circumstances around each of those. And then we'll look at the other victims. Now, this story map is really good too for those of you who like to get into the rabbit hole, because it's going to give you the chance to look for other suspects in the case and see what this case has done through the years and the people that they've looked at. We'll be able to look at some of the media around the case. And most importantly, I want to just spend a minute and talk about what we know now about this particular suspect. And I want to do that by just exploring this story map. And we're going to zoom back out to the global view from space where we can see the world. You can see a point on here. This is Long Island and shows us where these events were occurring. If we zoom in, we can get a good look at where all the bodies were recovered. We can see the names of those that we know and the names of the unknowns of those that we don't know. We can then zoom in on Gilgo Beach and this Long Island place, the Gilgo Beach area where all of these bodies were recovered. From there, you can take some time, explore each of those in the story map and look at those in detail. You could maybe go in and look a little bit closer, and you can explore this in the story map, this 3D map of the Gilbert case, and where Shannan traveled from house to house complaining about someone chasing her. She was on the 911 call but unable to explain where she was, including each individual home where there were 911 calls made from homeowners saying this woman was out here creating all kinds of ruckus, saying she was being pursued, and then the location where her body is eventually discovered. From there, I want to just zoom back out and go right to the location where the suspect was arrested. And on that map, I'm going into the intersection near his home. His home is only 2 doors from that intersection, and I think it will come out in time, but I don't want to be the one to reveal that and suggest it. But you've seen that little red home. You can find that if you're really interested. Again, I don't know at this point, because there may be other family members and stuff that frankly shouldn't be harassed by anybody. And we've seen some pretty bizarre things happening from YouTube creators lately trying to get a scoop on this thing. But here's what's really important is as you look at this 3D map, you can see where the suspect lived in comparison to where many of the victims were recovered. And so this is going to be kind of an interesting expose for you, because here what I've done is I've created a route from this suspect's home to each location where a body was recovered. And holy cow, isn't this interesting? It's a centroid position that leads outward, and the travel distance isn't very far. It's also interesting how much this person enjoyed disposing of the bodies near waterways, which is kind of interesting. So if we go in and we kind of remove a lot of the noise and just look at the mapping area, you can see the location in yellow, just these little yellow points that are popping up that show where each victim was recovered. And the point in the middle where all of the routes are expanding out is the suspect's residence and, of course, the locations going outward. So if we were to go into the location where his home was and to where the victims are recovered, we can see these lines of sight and these roads that most probably this suspect traveled as he went from point A to point B. So again, from the suspect's home out to the locations where these victims were recovered. Now here's something that I found really intriguing, and that was that the suspect also worked in downtown New York. And as we look at this particular map, we can see how close his office is, architect by trade. And of course, I leaned on my partner's Truth Finder to find a whole lot of this information out. But he is within blocks of the location where three women tied to escort services were last seen. Melissa Bartholomew, Jessica Taylor, and then Maureen brainard-barnes. And so you can explore that map in detail. You can get more information about that, where he was working, where these bodies were recovered. And you can start making your own determination if police are on target with this particular arrest. Frankly, from a geographic perspective, it's making a whole lot of sense. And it's going to be really interesting to see the evidence that starts to unfold and the correlations that are going on. Again, I would recommend that you don't harass people associated, that you don't go to the home where this suspect lived, that we don't bother the family members, if there are family members, and frankly, I don't know that there are. Now, if this is a successful businessman working in downtown New York, the house kind of looks kind of ratty where he was arrested. I don't know if that's true or not and what the value of that home is. It didn't look like it was the home of a successful architect in downtown New York City who has founded a business based on architecture. But you never know. Maybe it's just a beach house or a home for when they get away from the city and they have a really nice place in town. But again, my recommendation is that we're not harassing this family. It's not their fault. As I said on network news a few nights ago, you can choose a lot of things in life, but you can't choose family. So let's cut these people a little slack, including don't harass the business. Imagine the people that work in that company who right now are scratching their head saying, I never knew. If this is the guy, kudos to police for finally putting it together. And you know what? It makes me think of another murder case in Suffolk County of Dennis Wustenhoff. Detective Wustenhoff has been dead now for 32 or 3 years, if I remember right. I speak with his family regularly. You've seen me appearing on Dr. Phil to talk about Dennis's case. Well, kudos to cops for finally solving, hopefully, this really old 2010, 13-year-old criminal case. I hope Dennis Wustenoff's next. And I want to know what your thoughts are, so please enter them down below. And thanks so much for your support of Profiling Evil. Look for me on Court TV and News Nation and other places as we talk about this case in the coming days. I'll be in London, England next week, and maybe I'll bump into a few of you there, and we'll have a chance to visit. And I hope to be able to dial in and talk about this case on some of those news shows. Thanks so much for your support of Profiling Evil. And please make sure you're checking us out on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and catch us on Twitter. And you know what? We just dialed in and created a Threads account, so maybe we'll start having some communication there. But please share us with your friends. Thanks for donating to Profiling Evil. You can always donate through YouTube, or if you'd like and it gives us a little more, do so through PayPal. And if you want, you can always send an Amazon card, a gift card that we can use when we need to buy equipment and other kinds of things. Thanks for your support of Profiling Evil. Catch our podcasts on Profiling Evil Podcasts on your favorite podcast platform, and we'll see you all soon at the next crime scene.